thanks everybody. The case studies that you have, we're going to go over this at the end, so you can peruse through them as we're going. But ultimately, what I want to talk about is a bit different in terms of the services you hear about more and more. Is we're a negotiations company. We stand between basically the vendor and the customer. So all of these vendors you see out here, we negotiate with them on a daily basis. Our lifeblood has been built around technology and saving money. Ultimately, our goal is to save you guys money. So as we go through this, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we see. We have probably the most unique insight in technology and where people spend their money, because we see where they spend their money. We kind of manage their checkbooks in a way. And we can see where the trends are going, what's new, what's different, what's old, what's out. And so this gives you a little bit of a snapshot. The case studies you have there are some actual real life things we've gone through. So we'll just roll through here a little bit. From a financial services perspective, if you look, they spend more money than any other segment, about $500 billion a year in their technology investments. And that's big, that's huge. And we service more than just financial services. We're in healthcare and we're in manufacturing, and by far, I would say the technology spend in the financial services segment has been the biggest growth. 52% of the companies with a technology procurement staff use outside support. What you'll find is the growing trend is requiring the investment to be made. However, when the investment's made, it's a lot of times brought down to a procurement staff that says, here, sign this contract. Everybody's pretty good at negotiating in one way or another, especially if it's your own money. But we do it for a living, and we do it not only for a living, but we do it multiple times. So it's sort of, our analogy is, I'd rather hand off my car buying experience to someone who buys cars 20 a month than I would just one a month. And it's not that you can't do it, because we're all smart in this room, but it's not so much as I can't, I don't have the time, I don't know how I'm going about it, whatever. So in most cases, we find that they really just want us to augment their staff in a lot of ways. 77% of CIOs surveyed don't feel that their company's technology contracts are competitive. And this is an interesting statistic, because if you went and talked to a CIO directly, they'd say, oh yeah, we get good deals on the things we buy. But behind closed doors, I think they all realize maybe they don't really get that great of a deal. And the last one is my own surveyed that 100% of executives don't think their companies save enough money, but we really do run into this a lot, where we're in a unique position where we save companies money, but we're not there to make their decision for them. We want their business to run the business, so let the technology do the work for them. The pressures, you know, you want to negotiate your spend, but you have, you know, the challenges of both sides. You want to keep as much as your money as possible. That's obvious. But our mentality is, if you don't know, or I'm sorry, if you don't ask, you're not going to know. And we're willing to ask. Our negotiators are project managers first. They're there to manage the project from a dollars and cents perspective and manage it from a technology perspective as well. And we want to keep the landscape competitive. As you talk around the room and everybody knows what you're investing in from a technology standpoint, keeping the landscape competitive is tough. It's very tough, especially today. I mean, people are at SAP shops and Oracle shops, and they have huge investments in IBM, and you want to keep as competitive a landscape as you can, and you want to keep your partnership strong. But the bottom line is, I really need to save money. So your challenges over there are the vendor relationships, not getting in there and just being a hammer to your vendors, because that's a challenge everybody faces. We all have partnerships, we all have key vendor relationships that you need to maintain, and that's what we're there to help do as well. But ultimately, the facilitation of that in the industry is going to be very difficult the more and more you invest in the technology. Staff skill sets and the availability of your staff, everybody knows we're doing more with less people, and that's no different than anybody else in negotiations and buying technology. And timing. speed to market is the key, and not screwing that speed to market up is a big issue. So when you have your vendor relationships to manage, you have limited staff and availability to do that with, but you still need to be very time sensitive. It's all a difficult equation, so there's a lot of pressure in this to drive cost savings. Who do you get to help? Where do you go? What do you turn? This is sort of a landscape of the industry. There's really no secret to the magic quadrants. You can put whatever you want in there, but I tried to segment it out so you can see what a pure play negotiation company looks like. They're out there, you've seen them. A lot of them born out of the industry of telecommunications. They have a stab and grab mentality. They're just going to come in, beat up your vendors, take a bunch of money from you, and take a high percentage of the money. They really don't have a partnership in mind. They're not there to work as a team with you. The tactical consultants are really there to help with the tactical sort of things. It could be POs, it could be basic contracts, those sorts of things. Again, there's a segment for them. Usually they're pretty pigeonholed into what they do. Large consulting firms, we've all dealt with them, Deloitte's, the McKinsey's of the world. They're in there, and we actually find, and we just talking about this, we kind of follow them around because we see a lot of industries that are making large investments in these large consulting engagements, and Deloitte will come in and give you a great notebook on telling you how to get better, but they don't get you any better. And we follow it around, and we want a copy of the notebook because they're going to show you different places to go, and that's the spaces that we want to start guiding to make investments in, and that's where we'll help negotiate. And so I think from a practical standpoint, your ability to negotiate in those spaces is going to become critical, and that's kind of where the long-term high strategic value. You don't want a company that's going to come in and sabotage your relationship with your vendors. That's not going to help at all either, but you want to save money along the way. So these long-term sort of engagements that you find yourself in are going to be key to a long-term success in operational efficiencies overall. So in the handouts, and I want to kind of walk through these a little bit with you that to see some real practical, I think for us, and Steve Frederick's here with me, and he really is our vice president in charge of this entire segment of business, so he can tell you some of the challenges in this, but seeing what we do or how we do what we do, and we're not the only one out there, but we're trying to guide you to understand that there is the ability to save money in some unique situations, and many times laying right in front of you. So the case studies that you have here, first one is a large desktop outsourcing. That arrangement was done with it was a complex. It was huge. It had a high strategic impact. It did affect in terms of fixed costs. There was actual people involved in it, in outsourcing some key jobs. That one is to give you kind of a scope of, there are large business process outsourcing engagements that take a lot of time, they're highly complex, and there is a lot of assistance needed in those areas. I would say that the case study regarding the outsourcing is probably the most prevalent one that we see in financial services. I think most financial service organizations are studying the business process outsourcing more and more, especially in the technology and back office situations. So the second case study is a little something that's more practical. People see every day, or it's we call them MFDs, multifunction devices. But as you'll read in there, the relationships can be complex, especially in the financial services sector. The relationships typically are tied because of the imaging structures and things. And that's the second case study that you see there. The dollars and cents that are driven from these negotiations are huge, and generally speaking, they're dollars and cents that aren't that often pursued, aren't negotiated well for either lack of ability sometimes in the staff, but also just the lack of the resource. The third case study that you see there is on video conferencing. The video conferencing case studies, that case study there, it solved a unique problem. Some of the technology requests that come in to spend on requests aren't necessarily, hey, solve my problem using this technology. It's more, I have a problem with, in this case, it was travel expense, and they were going to solve the problem through a video conferencing solution. So through that one, you can see the cost savings that were driven there. One of the things that we'd like to really get across to the group here is when you invest in technology as a whole in the financial services segment, you're going to see more and more of your payback being scrutinized, whether it's time for payback, whether it's the amount of the payback, or however it's measured. The key to that is going to be that your payback is invested in, your investments are put into the right areas. We look at the investments as being that they need to be mobile, they need to be agile, they need to be cost effective, and they need to be done in extremely time sensitive manners. And the case studies, and that's why I wanted to leave them with you, and we have them in electronic format if anybody would like them. But ultimately, they're there to kind of be a teaser to let you know the areas that you can look into. But what we try to get across is there is money there. It can be saved. And if you use the time and the effort to put into this, whether it's through us or through your own staff, the cost savings are tremendous. And not just in the complex environments, but also in a much more tactical environment and everyday use items. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. I didn't want to stand up here and go on with 20 slides. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. If nobody has any questions, it'd be great. We can keep it on schedule for this afternoon. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time. And if you guys have any other questions, we'll be here.